gente linda, and welcome to Panavisión, the Todo Soul Flow podcast that brings you all local stories, news, and music with your favorite, delicious, sweet.
This will make sense soon.
This will make sense soon. Hosts Aneri Clary, the co-founders of Panamia Club.
Yes, for those of you who do not know, Panamia Club is a collective that's making supporting local entrepreneurs and creatives easier than finding atomic work in Wynwood. It's everywhere.
Definitely.
Every episode, we'll invite a locally based Pana to discuss what they're doing in their community, and then we're also going to have a musical guest come on and talk about their latest release.
Yes, absolutely. And today we are going to welcome Sophia of Miami Freedom Project to discuss how to bridge political divides in Miami.
And then later we're going to bring on one of our first panas ever, El Igor, here to talk about their latest EP for the summer.
Super excited about it. We actually had a sneak peek, and it's fire.
It's great.
It's pretty fire. We have Sagrada Media, social media management. So we're actually going to be talking to her in a second, but she is Sofia Hidalgo, a Miami-based social media manager and content strategist. She has 3 years of experience in creating and optimizing content for Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And she specifically works with nonprofit organizations, small businesses, local initiatives, and personal accounts in South Florida. So that is incredible because that's actually our first social media manager on our directory, and we are so happy to have her. I can personally recommend her. She is incredible at what she does. So I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I kind of wanted to introduce like a little bit about how we met. So we actually met fairly recently. We were both in this program called Artists as Catalyst, which is run by the Peace Studio. And, there were 40 people in there.
Yeah.
We actually didn't really speak until like the third day.
Fair.
And
I don't think I spoke to anybody until the third day.
that's okay, valid. But you caught my eye, even before we got into the program, because I was like looking at all of the people that signed up, and then I remember you mentioned that you work with the Miami Freedom Project, and I was like, man, I know that name from somewhere. And then I looked at the account, and I was like, this is awesome. I'm so glad that I'm going to meet this person. And then we did, and we actually ended up having like a really cool collaboration while we were there. So once again, thank you for coming on, love.
Thank you. I'm so excited. It's interesting when you're somebody who does social media because you're always behind an account and no one knows who you are, but you know who everybody else is. So when I make content for the Miami Freedom Project, I have to like remove the backgrounds of everybody's face. So I've seen everybody's face. I've gone through all of their social media profiles. And then when I meet people and say, oh yes, I do content for Miami Freedom Project, in my head, I've known them for years.
Right.
For as long as I've worked for Miami Freedom Project.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
That happens to me as well on the Instagram of Panamia.
Yeah.
And you kind of...
Gladys is the lurker, by the way, in case you were wondering.
Outing me as a lurker. All right.
Anyone who does social media, we have a bit of stalking tendency.
Yeah.
Because you need to know
No,
who
you
everybody
have
is.
to.
to
You
know.
have to.
Absolutely.
You have to.
It's for fun, and just to know to know what you're getting into, kind
Right.
of. Yeah.
Right.
It's actually so great to finally meet you. I've heard a lot about you from Annette.
Thank you.
Yeah, and when the first time that Annette ever talked about you, she was just like, because we've been talking about trying to have someone on the podcast that could talk about how to frame language so that you're not scaring people, but and like are aware of their own traumas or their own like past, and how to like address some of these issues without using trigger words, basically.
Right.
And so like when
Basically, how do you have these conversations with people that already have like radical ideas and
or that come from countries that that had authoritarian governments, or
Right.
and how do you connect with those people and communicate ideas with them being conscious of that. And so
Right.
that's what something we had always been talking about. And when she introduced you, she was like, I found the person. I found them. Like, we manifested it. They're here. They're going to come on the podcast. I was like, okay.
No, it's true. It's true. Like the moment that you started talking to me about like Miami Freedom Project, I was like, yes, got him.
I'm so
But
happy you're here. Yes.
But before we get to that, I wanted you to introduce yourself because you are an individual aside from the organization. So, hello, Sophia.
Hello, yes. So my name is Sofia Hidalgo, and I do social media management, and one of the biggest groups that I do it for is the Miami Freedom Project. And this is a nonprofit in Miami which the goal is to build a progressive space, mostly for Cubans, Venezuelans, Haitians, Dominicans, and others in the diaspora community that Miami represents. And both me and the co-founders come from a Cuban background and come from immigrant experiences, but have also lived either in New York or in Washington, D.C., or in other cities that are very political, where the language changes. And so working for the Miami Freedom Project is all about how do we make politics understandable and digestible to the people in Miami, because we have a very unique city, and you can't take the same way that you speak about politics and policy in New York and Washington, D.C., and place it here in Miami and expect people to understand you. I mean, we talk to abuelos a ventanitas, we love pastelito de guayaba, there's like chickens outside all the time. Everybody has some neighbors that's always playing
the
music.
chickens have opinions too.
The chickens
They,
have
like,
opinions
contribute
too.
to the conversation.
It's a different culture, and people come from very usually come from an immigrant background where they were born or their families were born in other countries, and so that all has to be taken into account when you speak about politics. And there's a real opportunity to invite people into the conversation of democracy without making people feel isolated and without triggering real trauma of where their families came from. And that's part of the work that I do with Miami Freedom Project, is breaking down national, state, and local news and events and initiatives for people in our communities to be able to understand, to be able to relate to, and maybe think about an alternative to the Republican monolith that a lot of Cubans, myself included, are very familiar with, but recognize some faults in and want to see a different path forward when it comes to engaging with democracy.
That's an incredible way to put it. And
Thank you.
it's a mission that, is no small feat. And we've definitely talked about it a lot, specifically because it's a problem that we run into often.
Right.
We're like, how do we have these conversations? How do we like broach these topics? Because it's like so like divided that it's like sometimes a little bit difficult to have an open conversation, because everybody already has an opinion. I mean, it's impossible at this point in time kind of to escape politics, really.
Yeah, I mean, apolitical to me personally doesn't mean apolitical. I think like where things are
It's
right
almost
now.
a political stance to say
Yeah,
you're apolitical.
right.
Yeah. But I did want to ask you kind of like how you fell into this work and what it means to you.
Oh, that's a great question, actually. Thank you for asking me that.
Of course.
And I said that's a great question because this work is actually very, very personal to me. Most of my family has all worked for the administration, the Obama administration or the Biden administration, or previous positions in the White House or with other organizations close to it. And the Miami Freedom Project was co-founded by my uncle, Patrick Hidalgo, who passed away in March of 2020, right at the start of the pandemic. And he
Wow.
was about 41 years old. He was very young. He's probably one of the first cases of COVID before we really knew what it was. And he had just launched the Miami Freedom Project with his co-partner, Ana Sofia Pelaez, who also lives here in Miami. And prior to this, Patrick was a U.S.-Cuba policy advisor for Obama, along with Ana Sofia Pelaez's sister, Carmen Pelaez. And so he was very engaged on the work from a top level of how do we have the conversation of democracy and changing the narrative with our relationship to Cuba and Latinos in Florida, because another position that he held was the Latino Vote Director for Obama as well. And for those of you who don't know, Florida voted for Obama twice. not just the first time around, but also the second time around before we flipped to being a much stronger red state. And part of his work was being able to talk about politics with our Cuban neighbors, with our Venezuelan neighbors. One of the things I had told Annette was that Hialeah, which is the city with the highest percentage of Cubans in the entire U.S., also has the highest enrollment of Obamacare. Forever, since the Affordable Care Act was passed, it has always had the highest enrollment in Obamacare, which is our federal healthcare system. The second city with the highest enrollment is Doral, which is the city with the highest percentage of Venezuelans in the entire U.S.
Yeah.
And so when we look at what people need and what people respond to, it is care, it is compassion, it is being able to live and prosper in this country. And that's something that my family has always strongly believed in, and part of the work that founded Miami Freedom Project. So I moved here in 2020 during the pandemic to work with Patrick before he passed. And then we passed, I decided, I'm going to do this anyway. And I started with doing social media for a group called Cubana con Biden that was trying to form, whether or not you support the current president, it was trying to form a space where people could be Cuban and Democrats without being called a communist. Because in Miami, as soon as you say public school, as soon as you say transit system, as soon as you say healthcare, tú eres comunista, socialista, and you immediately get discredited. And there are people who identify as communists, there are people who identify as socialists, there are people who identify in certain camps, but that's not what we were. We were Cubans who voted Democrat. And so I worked a lot with Carmen Peláez to kind of deliver a message of how can we invite Cubans who don't support Donald Trump to get out, to talk to their families and say, we're all enrolled in Obamacare, we deserve to keep it. Or we all have Social Security and are cashing in our Social Security checks, we should be able to keep our Social Security. That's a right that we have because we pay taxes. And that's how I fell into this work. And the longer I stay here, the more involved I get with as we talked about, language and messaging of saying that we support democracy and that the services that we all use, we should be able to keep them.
Absolutely. And what an incredible story.
Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. And just like, thank you for the work that you do. I think it's incredibly important. But I did want to take a moment to kind of kind of apply it to what I see in my own family, right? Because you mentioned Venezuelans a lot. And it is true because Venezuelans tend to run a little bit red, like here in South Florida. And it is the same thing. It's a reaction to obviously the socialism and basically the dictatorship that we have in Venezuela right now. That is the reasons why we have so many Venezuelans in South Florida right now. And it's it's very difficult to kind of distinguish those two different contexts because it's kind of one thing to talk about public services here in Miami and what we need as a society, as immigrants, in order to kind of operate in this country. And it's a completely different conversation to talk about what happened in Venezuela, and it's very difficult to kind of bridge those two conversations. Yeah. And it's exactly what you were talking about, those labels. I can tell you that my family specifically is a little bit more on the progressive side in the spectrum, but the minute that you throw in the word socialist, completely shuts down, and for good reason. I personally have lots of stories in my family about people that have been victimized by these regimes. So it's kind of how do we have these conversations? Which is what I would love to explore with you, and how the Miami Freedom Project does this work.
Yeah, absolutely. I got distracted.
Oh, no, it's okay.
So let's see, where do I start? repeat the question, the last bit.
Oh, okay. It's okay. We won't be able to spend too much time on this
Okay, no,
question.
I'll keep it
but just
quick.
like kind of like talk a little bit about like how you kind of like approach this.
Yeah, because
The
I think a
situation.
lot of people like have had the experience of a loved one either like there's the messaging from the Republican Party is just so structured in such a way that it's a lot of people have
Like
have
you
fallen
either
victim.
this or
Yeah,
that.
or that, yeah. And so we've seen a lot of people, like even in our own families or friendships, like friendships and partnerships like suffer from that sort of messaging. So if we're trying to again like engage with those people, what are some things you've learned along the way to kind of help us?
Great. Okay, I have my response to that. So something that's really important to note is that Fidel Castro ran on a platform of workers' rights and healthcare, and this in similar terms that the Democratic Party uses today, but in a very different context. And so there are a lot of people who were for the revolution early on. They said, yes, I want healthcare. Yes, I want public school. Yes, I want to be able to go to work and get paid a fair wage. And then when they saw that he was actually a dictator and saw their friends get shot out of the sky, as my abuelo did, they realized, oh no, I cannot be in support of this. I cannot be in support of these measures that he is claiming if it comes at the expense of our livelihoods, if it comes at the expense of my personal rights, of my freedom of speech, of my right to own property, of my ability to vote. And some people who were for the revolution became counter-revolutionaries, and others who were always against the revolutionaries, left. And there's a complicated history there, but it's important to note that a dictator on the left and a dictator on the right is still a dictator. But the platforms they use then trigger people. So when we say, socialized healthcare, they hear the term socialized, and it is traumatic, as it would be for anybody who experienced that.
Of course.
And so the way that, I approach this conversation is similar to what I talked about in terms of like, your abuela is most likely on Obamacare. So the way I approach it is, mijo, tú quieres keep the healthcare para tu abuela, para que ella pueda vivir, and my abuelo has Social Security. I'm like, abuelo, ¿tú quieres tu Social Security? No podemos pagar para nada sin eso. That's his only income right now, because he got screwed out of his job. So it's looking at what are they currently benefiting from and ensuring, can we keep that? If we have public schools in the neighborhood, we don't want to vote for somebody who's going to take away funding from the public school that we all attended to fund a private school, And it's like looking at where do people actually benefit from and talking specifically. People need to hear like, what is in it for me, to be honest.
The reality of the conversation is that this is really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
This is really uncomfortable to have these conversations, but we have them because we believe that they're important, because specifically in Florida, they are systematically being taken away. Immigrant rights, like LGBTQ rights,
Reproductive
rights, the
our
ability to
personal
exist,
freedom.
housing, everything is tied to politics in this moment in time.
Absolutely.
Even climate change.
Absolutely.
Like ignoring all of that stuff. So yes, thank you for having this conversation with us, Sophia.
I'd love to talk more at any other point. I'm like, I feel like we could talk about this for a whole hour.
For a long time. For a long time.
Is there anything
whole
like?
podcast.
Is there anything else that you'd like to mention though, like that you really wanted to talk about?
The way we have, it all comes down to language, and it comes down to being relatable, and you can't get upset at people for where they stand. It's more about inviting people into the conversation, as you have with me today and others. The majority of my friends in Miami are Republican, and we talk all the time, and we disagree all the time, but we still have that conversation, and we find our own middle ground. And so it's hard not to shut down. It's hard not to get angry sometimes, but we all come from a very similar background. And so the more you look at it from a person-to-person perspective and being able to relate to people's humanities and talking about our ability to live freely, the more you're able to open up a better relationship, I think, here in South Florida and all across the state.
Thank you so much for that. Now we're gonna switch gears, and we are going to invite on our lovely guest, Igor. I always love talking about Igor. It immediately puts a smile on my face. I'm like, this beautiful human being, this cutie pie. And here he
You're.
is.
What's up?
Hello, my love. How I kind of wanted to introduce to you, like, to the people that like don't know you. How would you say, "Hi, I'm Igor"?
I'm Igor. That's my real name, but my artist name is El Igor, which is the Igor, and I make urban alternative music in the city of Miami. Yeah.
Yes.
That'll be the sum up.
Yes. Yes.
Make a lot of music too.
Yeah.
I heard you're wanting to get to 100 songs.
Yeah.
Where are you at?
I might be at 100 already.
Already?
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like I don't have the exact number right now, but it's been 3 years of releasing music, so I know that I'm for sure around, like, I want to say no less than 50 personally, and then
Mhm.
like collabs and all that like might add up to
That's
the
so
hundreds.
cool.
Yeah,
That's so many.
There's a lot of
and
music.
It's a big journey.
it is.
How has it changed? Like, how has your body of work changed from when you started?
Well, it changed from me doing my, like, just recording and doing my own stuff on top of YouTube beats to working with people. I guess my team has just increased, and then personally I've gained experience to where, like, we sound better than we did before, and then the goal is to sound better than we do sound now, but it's better than when we started 3 years ago, definitely.
It's really cool. I think the way that you've founded this like incredible community of artists, and I can say this because I know a little bit like about some of the artists that you work with, and I remember when you came out with, I think it was like a listening party that you had last year for your last album, which was Miami 2019. And you invited like a couple other people to perform, Rolando La Mosca, I think.
Rolando Mosca.
Rolando Mosca.
Yeah.
And of course, Alejandro.
Yeah.
And I was just like so incredibly blown away about how like all of you are just, it was like spoken word poetry. Like it's just poetry, like to music. And it's like incredible. And I don't know if that's like, if you just like attract like those people or like what it is. What is the sauce?
Well, I definitely attracted those people, but it started by putting myself out there first. You know what I'm saying? Like, like I feel like nowadays, like it's hard to come outside. So like I respect every single artist that like comes out here and like performs in front of X amount of people, because it takes a lot. It takes getting up, rehearsing, getting ready, not caring, or I guess caring but doing it anyways. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I started doing it like just in my crib, but then when I started coming out and people started seeing me come out, the people in the scene already were like, okay, we can work with this person. And then, yeah, I feel like that attracted other people to feel like, oh, I can do that too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can pull up, we can form a team. Like, yo, working with teams is the best thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, Acepana, you know what I'm saying? Associates, I feel like that's super cool. Like, I wouldn't have a podcast platform if I weren't like affiliated to you guys, or like, if I have been in the scene for you guys to see me. I remember when I met you guys. It was a show.
It was a show.
It was at Unseen Creatures. That was the first time that I saw Panamea.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
I was vending and you were performing.
Yeah.
And you were there with Charlie and
Charlie
Pablo.
Tripp and Pablito. Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
Yes.
I was on their set, and I don't remember if I had my own set, but yeah, I was just out there. That's what
Yeah.
that's what it is.
No,
that's
you
really what it
definitely
is.
made an impression. I was like, okay, Fit.
That's fire.
And then you performed at like when I had an event for my clothing brand, which to me meant a lot.
Hey.
And it was incredible. You like had like just captured the audience.
I was the only performer there, right?
Yes.
Oh my
Yes,
God, that
you
was
were
such
the
a
only
nice
performer.
experience. That was
No,
a really nice
it was
experience.
incredible.
Yeah.
And then after that, like very shortly after that is when we started Panamia, and then you were completely for it. And that, like, I have so much love for the people that have been with us like since the very beginning. So like that's why we always try to include you in our projects, because we're like,
Yo.
You
You guys can always
tú
count
eres
on me.
pana, no?
Yeah. That's super cool. But
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Can I speak to you guys about this upcoming project?
No,
Yes,
I mean
please.
that's why you're here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
definitely why you're
it's a 3-song pack, you know, coming from a bigger album. My latest album was like 15 songs, and then we did a deluxe where we added 5, so 20 in total. And I can tell you from experience that that's a lot of work. Like that's a lot of work. So because of going through the creation of that and the release and all the work, we enjoy the process, but that just told me like, okay, maybe for the summer, cause you know, like I'm not a full-time artist. Like I have to like do
Right.
other stuff
Of
and work
course,
and
of
go to school
course.
and whatnot. I was like, you know, I can probably put out another project, another like body of music, but this time make it shorter. I mean, this is like way shorter than 15. It's like 5 times less, literally, but it's still like quality music. I feel like it's gonna serve a purpose of, you know, just being summer theme, more refreshed, and it's gonna be easier to work on, honestly. So I'm doing Sal pa la calle. It's a super nice wordplay. Like when I say it, that's why I like this song is called Sal only, but then the whole project is called Sal pa la calle, and
oh,
it's
and is it like each song like sal, pa la? and
oh
then
well,
last
that would
one?
have been a good idea, but I didn't do it like
Oh,
that.
never mind.
I wish I would have spoke to you earlier. But nah, I mean the wordplay in it is it could be sal pa la calle as of go to the street as a command, but it could also be like salt for the streets. You know what I'm saying? Like sal para la calle.
Cute.
So
Sal pa la
we're
calle,
definitely
sal pa
gonna
la
like
vida.
try to visually like, you know, salve on,
Okay.
but we're gonna try to like visually portray that wordplay. But yeah, it's super nice. You guys heard it. It's bumpy. It's you know, sal pa la calle, go out. It's the summer.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like all of your projects are super ambitious, man. Like I sometimes like I'm like, wow, how does he do it? That's crazy. And like before we kind of like move on to the next segment, I wanted to ask you if you wanted to like say a little bit about the group that you're working with.
La Máquina.
Yes.
La Máquina de Flow.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. So I'm actually working on something with them that's super special. We're working on because, you know, we're a band, but we don't have music out yet. So we are
Right.
working on some music.
I've been waiting.
Yeah.
Yes.
We both of us have
Yes.
been like, when are they gonna come out
Yeah.
with the?
Because we're out here performing and we're like, okay, we need to actually like, you know, give people something to have while they're not
When
seeing
you're-
us perform. And we are working on something together with La Máquina de Flow. That's my band. And it's super special because it's friends that before we consider ourselves like a band, like an identity, I would just play with them. Like they would just play for me, for my personal projects, or if any of the other guys had a personal project, like I would pull up, for example. And so we decided to just like combine all 3 projects. It's Ale TCA, Lazy Eye Music, and El Igor, and then make it a, you know, a band thing. And so what we do is we perform each of our individual songs, and they're all original. Most of them. We're trying to work on covers. Covers are fun, but what made it easier to come up together is that we already have our original songs that we just have to adapt to acoustic instrumentals. And then, you know, the same people that play my songs, they like, we all know each other's songs by now, you know, so we have like a huge repertoire and we just like learn it and vary it. But we're now like on the production side. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So La Máquina de Flow music coming out soon.
Oh yeah.
Also.
And that's something that I identified about the sound of La Máquina that I thought was so special, that it really does feel like it has like a little bit of everything. It's like
does,
a
it
mix
does.
of all of your sounds.
It has to do with our backgrounds and our culture and whatnot. Like, Yadi was born in Cuba, but he came when he was like very young. So his musical influence is way different than mine is. In growing up in Havana, or Ale is growing up in Cienfuegos. You know, you know, we have different realities, and so we just different, you know what I'm saying? So it's a super nice mashup. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's something in it for everybody.
Of course. Yeah. And then on that same band, I want to shout out Rico, his the bassist and producer for the whole band and my personal songs. So shout out Rico. And then we have Andrew on the drums, and then we have minor percussion, Jojito. Yeah, he's really nice. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Looking
Yes.
forward to more of the Máquina.
Yeah.
To
La
more of the
Máquina.
Máquina, to more of you. You know, we're your biggest fans, and we're always going to be
Yeah.
shouting you out whenever we can.
Hey, I know. I love you guys.